Welcome to episode 17 of the InsTech London Podcast. This is Matthew Grant, one of the InsTech London Partners. This week we're bringing you the panel discussion live from our event on the 29th of January in the Steelyard in London. And in a break from our usual format, this time we had the three of us as the partners in InsTech London, myself, Robin Merttens and Paolo Cuomo, talking about what we've seen in 2018 in the area of insurtech and what we're looking out for in 2019. We were delighted to have Mark Geoghegan, the executive editor of Insurance Insider, as our guest host. We also had a crammed room on the evening, over 200 people in there, a very lively crowd with some fantastic questions. I think you're going to enjoy this. Good evening. So we're going to bring the panel together. We're delighted, as I said, to have Mark Geoghegan. Mark is well known in the insurance industry, and like all good journalists, he doesn't pull his punches.
So let's just get cracking straight into it. So, was it a busy year? Are we really innovating? That's the first question. This is supposed to be all about innovation. Is there really innovation happening, Robin?
Yes. We're innovating in the sense that we've moved the dial. Are we truly digital? Are we ready for a digital model? My sort of current thesis on this is that we're not doing enough fast enough. I think that customers expect far more from insurers these days than we're able to deliver. And I feel a little bit like 2018 was a kind of year which we stalled. So, you know, insurtech is only 3 or 4 years old. So at the start it was careful, insurtech is going to disrupt you. The next year was all about AI, blockchain, all kinds of concepts that no one knew quite what they did, but, you know, let's see what they can do. Last year, I think we really found out what was good and what wasn't good. Increasingly, you can see that people who are good are backable and biddable, and they raise money. But also what happened is that insurtech and insurance started to partner. And I think that the consequence of being a partner is that people have got lazy. So now insurance companies are doing what they want to do. They're not really disrupting the model. They're adding a little product that does Uber drivers or something, but it isn't moving the dial. And I'm slightly worried now that disruption has gone off the table. I don't see people building full digital models. I don't see new products. I see a slightly comfortable scene returning.
So everyone's got sort of coupled up, and so they're not out on the pull anymore, is what you're saying? I mean, they should be. They should be. So I mean, I think it's right for you to say that, Matthew. Is it really just all about, you know, we've seen the successes so far have been more about companies making tools that help incumbents be better underwriters or better at processing their policies or doing other things, and there doesn't seem to be anything that's genuinely trying to take over the world and generally digitize the whole thing, a full stack. Is that really the way it's going to be, do you think? I mean, you know, there are companies that you've been involved in with Cytora, for example, things that have had traction and adoption, but are they really radical enough? Is that what Robin's saying, isn't it, I think?
Yeah, no, I mean, there is going to be, I think the real question is, when's it going to happen? You know, we all expect and hope it's going to happen in 12 months. We'll get there. I think the question really is it going to be around this collaboration, or is it going to be around disruption? And I really do think that actually the only way to make change is really going to be disruption. I mean, people say Lemonade's a joke to some extent because they've raised over $100 million and they've got a fancy website and look at their loss ratio. But the reality is, if you actually want to get out there and do something different, you probably do have to put a bunch of money at it. You have to get access to capital. You've got to market it. And actually that's probably not going to happen through an insurance company unless it decides it's going to set up its own unit and let it get on with it and go for it. So, yeah, I think it's going to happen, but I wouldn't want to say it's going to happen in the next 12 months.
Well, Paolo, you've got to say something. So a very credible digital full-stack insurance company, fully disruptive, with its own capital, has got to emerge at some point.
Yes, probably. I think, though, it's going to emerge in Asia, because that's where there's a real driver for change. And so there's a real opportunity, a little bit to what Robin said, for people just to sit on their laurels now that we've moved beyond the sort of disruptive fear of the maybe sort of last couple of years into this sort of chummy, we can work with them. And to Matthew's point, a lot of the the more successful companies are those offering services, allowing incumbent insurers to, well, not just to feel that they're doing things in an innovative manner, but, genuinely are. If someone's working with Societor or a digital fine print, they're doing something genuinely different, and it's making a real difference behind the scene, but it's not changing the fundamental way that it works. And so that's not going to drive the creation of a full-stack digital insurer here.
So do you all agree that with this incumbent industry sort of technological stack, that this sort of rotting heap of different spaghetti that they've got, that you can't do anything with it? Is that the point?
I'm quite clear on this. Lipstick on a pig doesn't do anything. Everybody has a legacy stack. The legacy stack is the excuse. So I'd love to be able to innovate, but I've got this 1988 pile of crap that I use as a policy admin system. There's a second part to that, which is bring me new product ideas, followed by, have you got 10 years of historical data on how that would work? Well, no, because it's a new product idea and no one's ever done it before. So if you put those two things together, I haven't got the infrastructure to do this, and my underwriters require a historical data set. You've got the mindset wrong right from the start. That's analog thinking with a kind of digital extension. It's not digital thinking.
I think that would have been quite a lot of thought in the last couple of years that perhaps the best way of going about this would be to create some sort of super MGA. Do any of you think that's still the way to go, or is that not going to work?
Well, it's possibly if you find the right line of business to get into. If you're trying to do an MGA, it's going to come in and write commercial property insurance, then you're competing against a market that's pretty well established. So you've got to figure out, what do I have to offer as my MGA that I'm going to be better in every sense? Better distribution, better pricing, better risk management. If, however, you decide that the legal cannabis market in the US is going to be 150 billion by 2025, and you're going to build an MGA to go and chase after the legal cannabis market, then go and have fun and make a chunk of money because you found a niche or not so niche business that you can really get behind. And so, and that could be your mega MGA, but I just think the real challenge for everybody, whether it's tech or whether you're an established business, is you are pushing against a really strong existing market that you've got to displace, and you can't do that cheaply.
Can I just take us back to a couple of things Robin said? So I think, IT is a good excuse. I think we should be slightly careful beating people up because they say, the IT doesn't let us do it. Because ultimately, at the same time, we're saying, look, we want to use the data accurately, we want good reporting and things, and then we tell someone, hey, look, don't use IT as an excuse, go and set it up over there. How do you track it? So, that is a valid problem, but everyone needs to work harder. I think the point, however, we don't have historic data, therefore we're not confident about pricing it, that isn't an acceptable excuse. The point is that if you're a bold actuary, or, these days as everyone's saying, well, do we replace actuaries with data scientists? There absolutely needs to be a way of being comfortable underwriting risks that you don't have 10 years of data for. And where the industry is shying away from that, I think is less excusable.
Do you think, Robin, do you think that surely technology is going to give you the answers to these problems? You won't need a 10-year loss record if you actually know everything about the risk.
To do that, though, you need to change your current profile of your underwriters, because if they're all analog 55-year-olds who've done a spreadsheet for 35 years, then giving them, the latest AI learning to tell them what the price of their cyber risk is just doesn't fly. So to some extent, you go back to the cultural problem there. Back to your super MGA problem, I would be amazed if the companies that have got a kind of a truly dynamic underwriting platform, a la Trove, Zego, Flock, don't at some stage get bored with a model that says partnering up and growing exponentially, just slowly with a company that gives me a bit of capacity is not what I came in to do, and would go after the capital to enable them to write in their own name. I just feel this comfortable partnership model is not going fast enough for the really best insurtechs, and I think they will break out and go back to disrupting.
So they'll have to make the leap.
Yes, but do they need to go full stack? This comes back to what I think will be an interesting question over the next couple of years. Yes, they need access to smarter capital than a classic carrier. I would agree with Robin on that. But do they need to own it themselves, or do they need to look at all the other possible options for sourcing capital? And that's going to be an interesting question, because these are smart people. They've worked out how to attract customers. They've built a technology platform that works. The natural next question is how to get the best access to capital.
So Super MJ is not actually a dead idea. If you're smart enough to be able to do everything that an insurance company does on a virtual basis and get the capital in around the back door, you can probably do it.
Yeah, I mean, look at the ILS market. It's now worth $100 billion. The retro market for conventional insurance has gone. As you said this morning at your event, the Lloyd's has kind of lost that whole ILS bit. So for the industry to be able to find alternative forms of capital that don't actually need to do very detailed, rigorous analysis, they need to do enough to know that they've got a good handle on their aggregation and diversification and can come in and undercut the conventional market. I mean, it took a while to get there, but it's definitely happened.
Probably, with MGA thing, I think about intermediary, being a super intermediary, being a digital intermediary, and being that digital interface to the customer, to the commercial customer, and representing that old incumbent capital and just letting them plug in at the back end. Are there any other impediments to that? I mean, I've heard it said that you can't actually make, given in some of the classes that InsurTech is going after, like gig economy, you can't make the kind of money you can't make enough money being an intermediary to make the business work. Is that correct, do you think? Was that a correct supposition?
I think so, because a lot of what the InsurTech world has gone after is gadgets, is a delivery driver for a day, is and the premium is £10, the commission is 20, is 2. You got to write a lot of business to make that work. And then if somebody excludes half of your business, one of the big problems is if you're used to a data set that is an annual renewal basis, and someone comes in and says, I'm doing it for a day, then there are not enough people to be able to do it with, and then there are a lot of exclusions. So by the time you've finished all that, and you've got 20 developers, and you're burning, £1 million a year on your development costs, you do struggle to get out from under. And I would expect people to go after the risk itself, at some point.
Something else, obviously, that's been big in the last 3 years, obviously, is accelerators and incubators and all of that. Obviously, and there was one at Lloyd's. What's been the value of those? What's your assessment of them as three experts?
So I think they've been absolutely a necessary part of sort of the journey, excuse the expression. I think 3 or 4 years ago, the incumbents who knew they needed to do something didn't know what they needed to do. And so the creation of a lot of these, even though there was a huge amount of fluff and drove a lot of sort of insurtech tourism, where the cool thing was to drag the board off to Silicon Valley and they came back 4 days later, with the new hoodie and a desire to do all their meetings standing up. It was necessary. And what you see now is you look at those carriers who've worked out what they can do for themselves, and they're doing it in-house, often much quieter. And, there's sort of innovation managers from the few of carriers sitting here who have a good, if not better, knowledge than Matthew and Robin about every single startup out there. Then you've got those carriers who are still relying on a lot of these sort of more generic industry incubators, and their time has passed, I think.
Thanks, Mark. I think that's why we asked you to be here, was to ask how do incubators compare to InsTech London. I think the question for anybody getting involved in those from the outside, so not so much as somebody getting on them, and I'm sure Eric Abrahamson can tell us the benefit that Digital Fine Print got from their multiple accelerators and incubators journey. But I think there's a lot that can be gained from events like this, where you get exposure at very good value to lots of companies and people. I kind of wonder why companies pay vast sums of money to go to some of these incubators when you can turn up for free as a mentor. So I think certainly there's value if you're going through that and you get the benefits. But if you're kind of sponsoring and supporting it from an outsider, that model it seems to be changing in terms of what people are spending on those as a sort of insurance company.
So the days are numbered, you'd say?
So I think they were good in what I call the curiosity years. So when people were curious and needed to find out what was going on, join one of those and see a lot of startups, and learn. I think my observation about 2018 was it was the year in which people started to make up their minds what accelerators and incubators work, which conferences to go to, who knows what they're talking about and who doesn't know what they're talking about. You know, by now it's starting to fall out, and I think that a lot of those incubators have good models, but what they lack is true domain knowledge. The domain knowledge is still very, very thin in insurtech and insurance.
They used to be generic, and now there's horses for courses. And if we do look at the Lloyd's Lab, which I know well, the value there of taking startups and putting them physically and sort of emotionally close to underwriters and brokers who may otherwise not engage with these startups, definitely is a value. But I think to the point that's made, it's the discussion between the right people now in the market. And 3 years ago, the only way to help people even work out where EC3 was to have a big banner saying incubator come this way. Now the right people know the right people, and it's the quality of the conversations, the ones that a lot of you have on evenings like this and come along, that is what's driving the person with the smart idea, the person with the need at the carrier, the broker who wants to do something different. They're already talking to each other.
I'm going to put the audience on notice that you should start get ready to get involved in this conversation in a few minutes. But before that, I think you should get specific about some specific things that you've liked or not liked in the last year, particular companies or anything, if you can, if you dare. What's been working, what hasn't, in a much more specific sense.
Well, I'm a great fan of real revenue and real clients. So 2 companies that I work pretty closely with that have been building up new clients. One is Cytora in the AI space, and they've established some really strong relationships with some pretty healthy pricing with those companies. Another one is Nick Mayer at DQ Pro. Some of you may know Nick, but he's just got out there with a really small team and signed up 9 companies in 12 months with a tool that basically does something very important but very simple, which is help people handle data. And it's an example of, there's different ways of handling technology, but you can, and building a business. You can get a large investment and you can go for it, and that's one correct model, or you can just get on with it and deliver something people want, bring the money in, prove it, iterate, and go from there. So those are my 2 companies to watch for 2018 and 2019.
Yeah, if you want to see who's backable, you look at where the money's going, and someone like Shift Technology can raise 40 million in a heartbeat because they're transforming the way which you do claims fraud technology, analysis, and everybody wants it. I think that's going to be really big. All those things which are machine learning, AI driven, need 2 or 3 years to learn, and that 2 or 3 years is up, they start to look good to me. I also really like things which are end client backed. I still think it's a failure of insurtech as a community that I bet we haven't got a single risk manager or end buyer of insurance in the room. So that's just not happening. And Maersk came into the equation in marine, 18 months ago and changed it single-handedly by saying, I'm a customer and I'm going to tell you what I want to do, what we're going to do. Therefore, I like the sort of Niall Barton type thing, BMW in the room, building what BMW want him to build. That's a model which just has to work. That's what the customer is telling us, the industry, that they want.
Paolo, and also don't forget things that are coming up. There's still so much sort of dry powder out there, and so much capital's been raised, and so much stuff has been developed. What's coming up in the pipeline as well?
I absolutely agreeing with Matthew and Robin. But what I think has been wonderfully concrete is the individuals who are part of bigger organisations that in 2018 have finally really started to see what a difference they can make rather than just letting their enthusiasm be batted back. So I met a young man the other day who took his time out to do a part-time master's, and his focus was on the application of AI to nudge theory to get underwriters to overcome sort of the inherent biases that humans have. Now, that's absolutely fundamentally important if we say humans are going to continue to be part of the equation in complex underwriting for the next few years at least. And I'm sure if he had suggested that idea a couple of years ago, he'd have been told to go away by whoever in HR said that's irrelevant. He's fought his case, he's understood that, and now the poor lad's got to try and work out how to get any underwriters to take him seriously, but at least he's soldiering on. So, it sounds cliche to say that it's the rising talent that's really going to drive this, but when you're sitting in a big incumbent insurer or a broker, kudos for those of you who, instead of quitting and trying to do a startup, are trying to change things from inside.
And one more thing before we open this up. we've got the founders of InsTech here. We need to ask them this is the first meeting of the year. What's happening with InsTech? And also, you got involved in this global alliance, didn't you? The Global InsurTech Alliance, which is it called GITA? Or
It's
GITA?
We could call it GITA, couldn't we?
GITA. What's that, and what's that all about? And is that doing anything, or is it just one of these sort of vaporware things that happen sometimes? And also, anyway, main things. What are the plans for this year for InsTech? What's the people out here going to expect from all of you guys?
We can do vaporware as well as anyone in the industry. I've made a career on it. Look, there are a lot of groups like us in Munich and Cologne, in Singapore, Hong Kong, wherever, and they're all communities. The theory, which believe confidently will be supported in 2019, is that there is a potential in putting all that together. The ability for the industry to be able to say what is happening all over the world, which startups should I be following, not in London, but globally, so that we could unite our intelligence and our knowledge and our, and I think that, that is, insurance is a global business. I don't think why InsurTech would not be global with it. And then the other thing that I think we will try and do here in InsTech London is create a hub, a physical manifestation of our own. I would really like the ability to put together 20, 25 seats where people coming down from Leeds and Manchester for the day would be able to join a pre-existing network, where people came in from Australia for a week would have a place to sit. Just oil the wheels of a network, a community where we would, where they could meet like-minded people and be part of something.
Great.
Yeah, so plug and play. Look out, Robin's got his eyes on you. I'd say, Mark, we've now got a fantastic community, and thank you for all your support. And many people find real value in these events through partners, capacity, capital, investors, the rest of it. We're going to look for ways to actually make that happen outside of the regular events we're doing. We're going to be continuing with our monthly events. We're doing private events now. We want to find a way so you can actually engage with each other either through us or directly in a more effective way outside of just being in these physical events.
Thank you. Yes, so just to repeat the global point, I think, and this is why the GITA initiative is important, because there's an awful lot to learn from elsewhere. It's very, very easy to read the various blogs and newsletters that come out of the US, and there's a lot of people flying transatlantic all the time to see what's going on. But I do see that what's happening in Asia is phenomenally important for us to learn from. And it's not particularly easy, if you're sitting here in EC3, to know that. So where we can play a role, in many ways doing what we've sort of achieved over the first few years of the last 4, of really bringing together people who were maybe only a few hundred yards apart but didn't know each other. And if we can turn that global, if we can get the right people and the right ideas from Hong Kong, from China, from Malaysia, then I think that's going to be of infinite value to people in this room.
So come on, put your hands up.
There we go. Main question is around the international vision. What do you really want to create? Do you want to create more of a global alliance for people to be coming in, going out? Do you want to help startups get out on a global stage? Or what's the vision for the international endeavors?
The idea first came when the InsurTech Alliance from Australia sent a cohort over last year. They sent 10. They came with 10 insurance companies, 10 startups, and we matched them up with 10 insurance companies, 10 startups, and it was an incredibly successful event. And then out of those, 2 or 3 have come along and said we're going to open in the UK. Well, we know a lot of people we can introduce them to. We can give them some space for 6 months. We can, so if I sort of follow that, line of inquiry, then the ability to oil the wheels for other InsurTech organisations inbound, I think, is very powerful. And I know that those who consult in the space, who want to know what's going on, who want access to the best startups, who want to be able to write strategy around what's really going on, don't look at what's happening in EC3 to write that. They need to write that on a global basis, what's happening around the world with insurance. And if we could, with a drop of a hat, say to 10 organisations, tell us what is happening in your part of the world, we're going to collect that together, we're going to pass it off to somebody else. That's a big extension to what we're doing right now.
More questions? Come on, put your hands up.
Hi, guys. I was wondering, given what you've seen during 2018, is 2019 the year for some real traction in blockchain?
The AXA XL blockchain question. I actually was listening, Jenny, to Helene Stanway's podcast this morning with Nigel Walsh, and I think with she explained it really well with the Maersk blockchain example, and I actually is one of the simplest ways that she explained blockchain, which is basically, in that situation, you put data up there onto blockchain, it's up to date, you know, because Maersk put it up there, it's the right answer. But the discussion was also, do you need blockchain? And the answer is you don't need it, but if it helps facilitate an existing solution, then go for it. If you've got blockchain and you're trying to figure out what you do with it, then no, 2019 is probably not going to be the year you'll figure it out.
Hello, I'm called James Poole, and I'm currently fundraising for a startup.
Raise your hand and we'll take a commission if you match this evening. But in all seriousness, there's been a number of people who've come up at the end of the evenings that we run normally and done their 30-second pitch who, I mean, Robin, you have the statistics in your head, but proper money has been raised on the back of those type of links. Proper employees have been employed. The network is so valuable. So, kudos to you for being brave enough to ask the question.
Hi there. My name is Christian Rufert. I'm coming from this industry from a sideways perspective, so I haven't been in it for a long time. And my question was about innovation. What strikes me, looking from the outside in, is that insurtech innovation seems to be long on product innovation, as you said, Uber driver insurance for one day or cybersecurity insurance, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, you look at this industry and it has this fairly complex, intricate, and fairly old school value chain of different players. And actually, if you look at, call it process innovation, value chain disruption, there's actually very little happening. My question is, do you agree with that assessment, and do you expect that to change?
Well, there's one angle to that, and I'll let Robin jump in a minute, but part of the challenge, I think, is if you look on the corporate buyer, so the big enterprises and who's buying insurance, is that the traditional buyer at a corporation is the risk manager, quite low in the organization, very risk averse, very little budget. Their job is to go out and buy insurance. And if you really want to change the industry, then you need to get the corporations thinking differently about how they're going to buy insurance and how about doing their own risk mitigation. Because without that pressure, then the risk manager is going to be business as usual. And we've seen some examples, Maersk is one, a few others. But I think to really drive change from that angle, we can talk a little bit about what it means in the insurance companies, but to drive change from the outside, it's going to require the corporations themselves to really feel that insurance is actually worth the CFO spending time on and not just delegating it down to somebody a few levels down in the organization.
There's no room for all the people in the current value chain. There are just too many players, and Lloyd's would be the first to admit that with with 45% of whatever the latest number is, but 45% of the total premium disappears in commission before it gets to Lloyd's. That's a non-sustainable model. Now, that's a given. What it is, there has to therefore be a turf war. So, Munich Re's of this world stood up and say, right, well, I'm going to start to write this stuff at source. But until that turf war manifests itself in a way that people lose a lot of business that they would otherwise have got, they'll just carry on with the old models. And that is happening faster and faster and faster. And what's going to drive that is ecosystems. I mean, I hate the word, but it's one of the big things of 2019. You watch people who control 100,000 customers come in and say, I have the data that I can do insurance and I want to find a partner to do insurance with, and that's data that used to go through an SME broker onto an MGA onto a... And I think that's what's going to move the dial in 2019. Ecosystems are going to say, I have 100,000 customers, who wants them?
There's time for one more at least, I'd say.
Hi guys, my question is in reference to the comments on China. Why do you think that China is sort of more likely to deliver change in 2019?
So I think the Chinese market from an insurance point of view is interesting in a number of ways. One, there's an awful lot of people, so therefore there's an awful lot of data for the people who like playing with data. There's also, should we say, more lax approaches to how one can handle data. Now that obviously means things that are done there can't necessarily be transplanted into the US or Germany or the UK, but you can absolutely learn in ways that you tend not to be able to do in certainly in personal lines insurance in many of the markets we're used to operating in. Also, insurance hasn't existed for many people as a product in the way that it has in the UK. However much people complain about the way they buy their car insurance and the home insurance, they continue to buy it in the same way, and that's one of the challenges for startups, is just getting the consumers to say, oh, I'll go and buy differently, rather than renewing, knowing that I've read in the paper that I'm paying £200 a year more just because I haven't bothered looking around. When you're starting to offer a product in a market that's never had a product, you can do all sorts of things. And when you apply a technology overlay to that, then I think there's all sorts of interesting ideas. And we need to look at which are relevant and which aren't. But we're daft if we're continuing just trying to innovate from talking to people around us. We need to look beyond.
Hi guys. On the other side of the equation from the startups, who do you think is doing anything particularly interesting on the incumbent side, broker or underwriter? And in particular, is there anyone beyond the sort of usual suspects that's caught your eye recently?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting to see what happens with Hyperion. Now they've launched Hyperion X, and they've put a CEO from one of the businesses into developing that. I think you get companies like Score that are doing quite a lot beneath the radar. They don't feel the need or they want to go and talk about it. But other than ones that we kind of tend to talk about a lot, I think all of us really struggled. If we're not hearing about it, then it's actually probably not happening.
From our point of view, we see a lot of innovation, and then we have the can you help me? Well, this sounds like a really good idea. Who do I take it to? And that's a really tough question, because there's a circularity to that. We will take it to the people who do the very best innovating and who did the really good job on the last one we took it to. So right now I think that's really difficult, because I've worked really hard on a whole bunch of smart ideas through 2018 that all came to nothing. And I'm starting to say to myself, where do I take this stuff? And that's sort of leads to my observation that I think that it's not quite as exciting a territory as it was a year earlier. I don't think budgets are as high. I think that people have gone back slightly to retrenching. And most of all, I get this, I get very exercised by the idea that nobody is building a digital model of the future. Everybody is retrofitting, lipstick on a pig. And that's a non-sustainable long term. You've had 20 years to think about this. Get on with it.
So just one thing to add to that. One way that anybody who's working in an insurance company can help is, so often we hear the story of people that are doing some great work. They've got a POC going. They want to go and publicize it because it helps them get other business. And the company just clamps down on it and won't let them talk about it, whether it's the legal department or the marketing department or somebody else. So I guess one, innovation with a small I would be for any of you working in an insurance company that know of sort of innovation and some really great things going on. Please do try and find a way to talk about it, and don't just seal or sort of put an embargo on anything being mentioned, either for competitive reasons or just some sort of over-caution from the point of view of your legal department, because that is what supplies the oxygen for companies getting growth, if they know, other people know that they're working with them.
We're done now. Yeah, well, bring your hands together and give these people a round of applause.
Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to that as much as we enjoyed our discussion. We'll be back for our next podcast episode with the second half of the evening, which got even more lively as we heard from some of the leading figures in insurance and innovation. In the meantime, you can find out what we're up to by going to our website, www.instech.london, and by subscribing to our newsletter, you can be sure to catch up on the new events as they come out. Thanks to our sponsors, CPP and Crow, for that evening, and also to our gold sponsors, MS Amlin and 90 Consulting.